Let's talk about some other hot-button issues. You're on the House Intelligence Committee. What are some of the things that you consider priorities in that area right now?
Well, I think we have to restore a bipartisan working relationship. There's a lot of work to be done. Setting aside the Russian investigation, our national and international threats remain. That process broke down under an extraordinary set of circumstances with the Republican leadership of the committee. We have to protect the Mueller investigation. For those of us old enough to remember Watergate, I would tell them after this investigation has gone 2 years, this is far more complicated and far more important. And of course the House has to resume its work on this investigation, which I would assume will begin sometime next week.
Well, the federal grand jury in the Mueller investigation has been extended. Can this new Congress find a way to protect the investigation if it's seen as being under threat, as many people perceive it to be?
Well, my Republican colleagues were given every opportunity to do just that. There has been legislation proposed to protect the Mueller investigation. The outgoing senator from Arizona, Mr. Flake, he refused to support any other judicial nominations. He stood up and did the right thing until they put the bill on the floor to protect the Mueller investigation. It still went nowhere. So it's a question of will here. In the meantime, we're probably facing the beginnings of a constitutional crisis. I don't want to think of that crisis as when the car has already gone off the edge of the cliff. The president's threats about how he's going to handle this investigation, his threats of firing Mueller, pardoning people, that is a constitutional crisis. How he uses that, or the threat of pardons, is a real threat to our democratic way of life.
What do you see as your biggest priority for 2019?
I'm doing what I have to do, not what I want to do. What I want to do is be a less-known national figure talking about the Russian investigation. I have to do that because it's so important. What I'd rather do is draw resources back as an appropriator, because as folks who are going to be on your program know today, the aldermen know, we need to rebuild the Blue Line. We need to rebuild Union Station. We need to rebuild our infrastructure. That's the kind of things I'd like to focus on. And climate change and gun security, and bringing resources back for the schools of the city of Chicago and my district.
Back to the Mueller investigation just for a second. Is there anything that you're privy to that the general public does not know that, that concerns you?
This is more important than Watergate. I believe that the president conspired with the Russians to attack our democratic process, and there were 16 other of his colleagues that were working with him toward that end. We will what took place. I don't want to tell them to have patience, but it's going to take a while. Watergate took 28 months from start to finish before the president left office. This is calculus to Watergate's algebra. But in terms of how important it is, because it involved a foreign adversary, it's critical that we continue to do the job.
Based on what you know, what do you suspect might have happened, or what do you infer might have happened in terms of the relationship between Russia and the president?
Well, there are things, there are issues like the money laundering aspect. We know that Deutsche Bank has a history of laundering money for the Russians. They were fined $600 million by the state of New York for doing just that. And we know that the Trump finance world got almost all of their financing through Deutsche Bank. What I've learned in this investigation is there are very few coincidences. But you take that to the 30,000-foot level, and I think the greatest concern is this. Was the president compromised because of this? All right? Was he seeking to protect the interest of the American public, or himself and/or a Russian oligarch, or President Putin? Those are the issues that we have to come to terms with.
Mike Quigley, thank you so much for joining us for very